Welcome to another exciting episode. My name is Kabaka Ivor. This is episode 3 of the Embers of Meaning, and we are going to look at the human soul. But before we look at that, as always, let's have a small story. Our souls are made up of 3 extensions: our minds, will, and emotions. We use our minds for perception, creativity, and giving word to our emotions. We use our will to decide what to do. That's why we have phrases such as the gift of free will. That is the ability to choose what you wish. Emotion is the part that begins to shape us into humans. It's our most delicate, but also our most important part. This is what makes us different from robots. All these 3 extensions work together to form our inner layer for communication and connection. The human soul is a very delicate part of us human beings. The soul determines so many things, if not all the things that happen in a person or to a person. So the soul, as you've heard, is made up of the mind, will, and emotions. And we're going to look at each part and how it manifests in the body or in life. When you see somebody writing something down, it's a very integrated process that is happening through the mind, into the body, into the hands, and making sure that the hand follows the instructions of the brain to write a letter, for example, letter A. So if we would like to understand the mind, then we must look at the mind like a lever. There is a pivot between the load and the effort in physics. That's how the mind works. It's a pivot between the load and the effort. Sometimes the load can come from within the body, or it can come from outside the body. So the purpose of a mind is for perception. It perceives the signals that come from outside of us through the eyes and through the ears, or through the mouth, or through the skin. The mind helps us to come up with decisions depending on the information we've gathered, depending on the research that we're doing, depending on anything. Every day and every time we are testing inferences. We are testing things. So we decide depending on the things that we perceived. It also acts as a retrieval system. It retrieves information from the brain. The brain is different from the mind. I hope you know that. The brain is the hardware. The mind is the software that sources data and projects it to you. So the brain and the mind are different, but they are interconnected through the nervous system. So the nervous system accesses things in the physical part of the body. So the memory is stored in the body or in the nervous system. The mind, its work is to decode that memory and make sense of it. The part of the soul that deals with expression, expressing what is inside of us into the external part or into the earth, is what we call will. So the mind decides, taking information from the memory of the brain, okay? And then it decides, what can I do with this information? Once you can think, once you can reason, once you can decide, you can exercise your will. That's why we have something called the gift of free will, because that is the part of the soul that decides, I can marry, I cannot marry, I don't like women, I don't want to have children. So that part that decides, that part that is of you, that decides, that's what we call the will. So the gift of free will, which you always read in the Bible, is that God made man independent to make his own choices. But of course, even if you're gonna make your own choices, he didn't make you independent in the, you're going to pay for everything. Man must give account for every word that he said. Emotions are the parts of us that makes us human. When we talk about empathy, the capacity to put yourself in another person's situation and understand their emotions, it stems from the emotion side of our soul. So when you are able to feel the cry of a child, a young child, like for me, I can't stand a baby crying. I will always feel their agitation. I can't stand to see a child in a slump mode. I'll always feel what they feel. So that part that makes me relate with them, that is the emotions part of the soul. And this is one of the most important part of our existence or of who we are as human beings. Even though people or a person can be autistic, they still can feel. When you look at the study of human beings and how they, place themselves, because the soul is also a determinant of how characters are placed. So some people are very smart in the brain, very smart in the mind, but they feel less. Okay? And then there's some people who feel a lot so good, but they are a little bit confused when it comes to decision. So what happens is the mind and the will, they work so close together to influence the emotions. Or sometimes the emotion part of the soul is so strong that it affects the mind and therefore affects the will. So when you see somebody who is overwhelmed with emotions, not being able to make a decision, is the will part and the mind part that is being affected. Or when you see somebody who is right out cold, just making firm decision, I'm not gonna buy their food, and he doesn't feel anything for them for having making such a hard decision, that means their will is strong, but their emotions, part of them is cold, it's closed, it's dead. We've been looking at the soul of man, how it's made up of the emotions, the will, and the mind. We've looked at, on the surface level, because these episodes are not supposed to go in depth. They're just shallow episodes, and then you can do your own research by yourself. But be careful, because there's so much information outside here. Some can be misguiding. So if you feel confused, make sure you hit me up, or send me an email at kabakaiva@gmail.com. In the next episode, we shall be looking at the spirit. It's gonna be an interesting one as well. So if you like what you've been watching, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe button, and any other button that is very necessary for you to hit so that this video can be watched. Make sure you hit that button. If you want me to talk about something, make sure you hit me up on the emails, or just comment down there. I can talk about some things that maybe you've not got it right. So please feel free to talk, to say, I'll look at how I can approach that. Otherwise, thank you for watching. This has been the Embers of Meaning, and as always, I've been your host, Kabaka Iva. See you in the next episode.